Hey guys, welcome to the Brave Way Podcast. I'm your host, Lavelle Miller. This pod, what I'll be talking about is your body size when it comes to doing grappling events. And essentially, what I mean by that is should your style have a drastic change if you lost or gained a certain amount of weight? Get my thoughts on that. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, and enjoy the pod. Hey guys, I always have to do those ads first before we get into it. But like I say, this is the Brave Way Podcast. I'm the host, Lavelle Miller, and getting straight to it. So, there's been a lot of conversation I've seen over the past year or so, and a lot of people are having conversations on like. Sorry about that interruption y'all heard there. But there's a lot of people that have been going back and forth in regards of what their grappling game should look like if they were to gain or lose a significant amount of weight. Now, what does that mean? What do I mean by significant? Significant is probably more than. It depends on your size. First and foremost, if you are a like 5'8", 5'9" person, and you were 180 pounds, and then all of a sudden you're competing down at 140 something pounds due to not only natural weight loss but also cutting for events or stuff like that. Uh, but when you get to higher weight classes, it'd have to be a significantly lost amount of weight before you'd really see any significant change. So, why I bring that up? So, if you guys follow wrestling, right? We'll go all the way to the collegiate level. When you go to collegiate level, after we're gonna use the last three weight classes. It's 184, 197, and then heavyweight, which is 285. Now, when you do world competitions and the Olympics, um, there are weight classes in between 197 and 285 pounds. Obviously, they're in kilograms because of the metric system, but there's a couple more weight classes. Like Kyle Snyder wrestled at one of them. He won multiple national championships in wrestling. I don't think weighing more than 225-ish pounds because he competed around, I think it was like 215-ish at the world level, world Olympic level. But so more or less to the point of what I'm trying to make is when you're a person and you're looking at grappling and you're like, man, I need to lose all this weight to either have a significant speed or strength advantage. It's very simple when you think about all these different categories, like I just mentioned. In collegiate wrestling, after 197, you're just a heavyweight. Why? Because the argument is that size and strength, while weight room might be a significant difference, actually competing with somebody who weighs 20 or 30 pounds of you is not as bad on you because of the strength that you had. Ferrari, a guy from Oklahoma State, I do believe, that just won his national championship, he wrestles 197. He says he walks around 220, 230, and then probably next year he's going to be competing at heavyweight. So you think about all that weight he had to cut to make 197, but he believes he can compete with the big guys at heavyweight. Now, you do have when you look at a lot of the national champions and stuff like that, most of them, Kyle Snyder obviously not included, but medalists, or upper tier medalists, they're always people closer to that 285 range. So there's probably a little bit there. But it's not like the matches with the other guys are not competitive. Like if you had somebody, like you couldn't imagine a 184 going against a uh what is it in college? Uh we'll just say a 100 and if there is like a 152 ish weight class, if there is one, I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But the guy who's probably 152 pounds, like I use as an example, he may only be like 5'6", 5'7", and he did cut weight, to get down there. But the guy who's at 184, he's probably 6 feet tall, maybe 5'10", and he's cutting too. And he's probably cutting from 200. So you got one guy who's cutting, like I said, you're cutting from 180 going down, or probably not at 180, but maybe like 170 ish and going down. You got a guy from 200 and going down. And then you have these guys competing with each other. The size, the length, and the strength differential will be greater. But when you look at the higher weight classes, like when I saw Ferrari one, he says going to go to heavyweight. I said, man, he may not be tall enough to compete. The guy who won, Gabe, he is like I think 6 feet or 6'1". So him and Ferrari are the same size, but they are a weight class apart. But if Ferrari did not have to cut that weight, he may be able to hang with them in some of the scrambles, regardless of strength, might have better speed, etc., etc. When you look at like jiu-jitsu, right, and you go to these grappling competitions, I'm normally the heaviest competitor. Shouldn't be proud of that, and I'm not, but it's like I'm normally the heaviest competitor in the ultra weight class, because in jiu-jitsu, depending on the competition, ultras are considered from like 225 and unlimited or 230 and unlimited. And so you don't, but now mind you, you don't see people who are like me near 315, 330 competing that often. A lot of times because they've done lost a lot of weight doing jiu-jitsu, and just overall lifestyle changes. So they're probably around 260s, 270s, 280s. Of course, there are still some heavier guys up there, but that's what you normally see. But when you go to these competitions and stuff like I'm mentioning, a lot of the medalists tend to be around 250, 260 pounds. Or, like the really good ones, they're a whole lot lighter. Like a lot of these guys that win black belt worlds and medal worlds, these guys are in the 230s and 240s, right? And they're having to compete against guys, like I said, that they have 100-pound difference on weight-wise, and their strength might be similar. But like I said, the height and everything else like that matter. Now, the bread and butter of what I was more or less meaning, after getting this weight discrepancy things and stuff out of the way, what I was really meaning to try to get to is like, should your style of grappling change when you lose a significant amount of weight? The answer to that to me is no. Because why would it need to change, right? So when you're in the gym, you are learning how to do arm bars just like everybody else. You're learning how to do rear naked chokes, pressure passes, like, different types of like cut through techniques and slick little dummy sweeps and things like that. That you already know this. All this is necessarily in your game. But some of the movements and stuff you're not going to be able to do. Well, if you look at it like this, you've been successful for the most part doing certain techniques for a certain duration of time already. There's no reason to change what you're doing because you lost weight, except in this case, right? If you are realizing, and you should have fixed this depending on your level, right? If you're using a lot of strength to counteract a lot of your moves that work because of your weight, that's when you have to really focus on the technique. That's still not changing what you actually do It's just making you do it the correct way. One of my teammates, Jackson Medina, he's 130, 140 something pounds. He's a purple belt, really nasty with his leg entanglements. Um, he can invert, go berimbolo. He's been working on a lot of truck stuff. That's a 10th planet term. But he, if he was to gain 20, 30 pounds of muscle, his game plan doesn't change because he has worked on his flexibility to do these different type of attacks. And the only difference is that he's going to be stronger to be able to do the attacks. As long as he's keeping up with the flexibility to go along with his strength, he's not going to have to change his game much at all because he'll have overall the body style to be able to be successful at things he does. Just like using him, once again, because I spoke to him about it, this guy, Gino Martinez, a 10th planet black belt. A couple years ago at a quintet, he submitted all these guys, and if you guys don't know who Gino Martinez is, Gino Martinez is the same thing, about 130, 40-ish pounds guy. Gino Martinez was submitting guys that were over 200 pounds with Kimuras. Now, mind you, a lot of people worry about, Kimura's a strength move, da-da-da-da, whatever. Gino Martinez's philosophy, and a side note about that, is that grip is so effective and so strong where you can either sweep out of the positions, control the positions, things like that, to where there's no reason to abandon that movement or not know how to do it. But yeah, Marcelo Garcia that says he never teaches people that because it focuses too much on strength versus leverage and using your opponent's ways to get you like it does in jiu-jitsu. But so Gino does that, and you see a lot of times you go watch Gino matches, he'll attack that Kimura right away. It doesn't matter how big you are because he's showing how effective that is. And if you think that if Gino gained 30, 40 pounds, he wouldn't go for that Kimura, he would go for the Kimura still all day. And the same thing with his leg attacks. He won't need to change what his style of jiu-jitsu is because of that. If I, or when I cut a bunch of weight, am I going to stop doing the things that got me to the dance with some of my choke setups, some of my passes, some of these other things? No, because I've worked on these things so long and have done them so well that I'll be successful. The only thing you really should be looking at is like opening up the various techniques that you probably felt like you couldn't do before because you did not have the flexibility, right? So if we look at people who wrestle, for example, right? If you are a wrestler, you have to, conversations I've had with buddies of mine years ago and still bring it up now. They was like, Lavello, in high school, we were the same weight class. I'd have beat you, or you'd have beat me, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the basis of a lot of our arguments is because it was like your size limited you to do certain moves, and that's all that you had the ability to do. And people have to realize that's not what people do, things that they're comfortable with, not necessarily that their size is limiting to them only to those moves. The reason why is because, like I mentioned, go look at these other competitors that are in your weight class or way close to you, and then look at all of these moves and these techniques that these individuals are doing. If these individuals are doing some of the same moves, Fabricio Verdum is a great example. They say he has a guard of a guy who weighs 170 pounds or whatever. While Fabricio might look at that as, props or whatever, he's looking at it as he just has one of the best guards in the world, which got him all those world tournaments or world championships at black belt. Because his size is not what dictated his movements. It's things that he learned to do and he could do well. So it's like, would his guard change if he had lost, 50, 60 pounds? No, his guard would have been just as good. And if there was other techniques that he felt like he couldn't do, he would implement them, right? He would change a lot of that stuff. Maybe he felt like he needed to go for certain more attacks or more when it comes to double legs, single legs, things like that. Those are the things that he would be looking at, and those are the things that he'd be looking at doing. And we're just in a world today that wants to believe that your size dictates a lot of the things that you do or you can do well. That's why when I compete or I roll with a lot of people, and it's the first time they've ever rolled with me, it's quite often that I hear they're like, "Oh, you move pretty fast for a guy your size," or "You do this well," or "You do that well," and then it's the ones that have rolled with me for longer periods of time that say, "Lavelle, you're just that's just good. You have this move down pack. You know exactly what to do, when to do it. Um, that's it. I have nothing else to add to that. When like if they comment on my cardio for when it starts, it's always like, Lavelle, you have pretty good cardio for somebody your size, and then now it turns into, Lavelle, you just have good cardio. But that all comes through people learning about you and doing things like that. But more or less, further to the point, don't think when you lose weight, when you're doing certain things, or you're putting on strength or whatever, you have to change what you're actually doing. You may need to adaptations do happen, right? Because like I said, you could realize you was getting a lot of success with a move because of the strength or the weight and not the technique. So you might have to clean up the technique. But that doesn't mean that your moves are no longer good. They're not warranted, and there's just things that you should give up on. Always think that whatever move it is that you're trying to do or trying to implement, how much success, like how often do you think you could hit this move and this move work a lot? If it doesn't work, then get rid of it. There's guys that are my size, got the same tummy and everything. I see them hitting triangles. I see them hitting arm bars from their back, no problem. I've seen guys that are just as big as me that when they get on top of somebody, they can't control somebody who weighs 130 pounds, and that person um, ends up sweeping them. So it's never your size, it's always your technique. And then and like I said, always look at the top of the chain people and see what they're doing. You're not seeing people at the top of the chain limiting themselves to a certain move set, unless it's like these are things that they do well. But you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you think that they don't have access to other moves. So, with that being said, this say become legendary and greatness is earned.